Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar is Structuring an SAP ABAP Report in an Optimal Way. My name is Erin Lett, and I am the Operations Manager here at Blackvard Management Consulting, and I will be your host for today. Now, I do want to go ahead and just introduce our special guest speaker, Lukas Dietzsch. Lukas is the CEO and Principal Consultant here at Blackvard. Lukas hails from Germany and is an experienced IT solution architect and project lead and has been working with SAP for well over 10 years now. Lukas is well versed in SAP from SRM, ERP, FSCM, SD, MM, and CRM, just to name a few. He is also fluent in the ABAP programming language and HANA. Lukas has helped implement software and management solutions around the world, working with powerhouse companies such as SAP AG and Ariba and BMW. So now with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn the reins on over to Lukas. All right, let me know when you're ready.
All right, thank you, Erin. So now everybody should see my screen.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. So thank you, Erin. Welcome to our second lesson regarding SAP development, ABAP development with ABAP release 7.4. The first lesson was about source code samples and new things, new releases from ABAP 7.4 and ABAP reports regarding to the 7.4, and today it's lesson 2. New ABAP development tools. In this case, we will focus on Eclipse, and we will have a look at object orientation and structuring a report according to the MVC model view controller pattern. And therefore, we will create a sample report and using these technologies, and we will create it completely in Eclipse. All right. First, repeat something regarding the background of SAP reports. As you know from the previous lesson, reports in SAP are used as a synonym for programs. So simple programming modules where you have a set of parameters, for example, user-defined search criteria and something like this that can be entered in a report or program in this case. So if I mix it up, program in this case means the same like report. So programs or reports, they use parameters to produce such a report, for example, an interactive list. So again, the term report can be misleading, and reports can also be designed to modify data. In this case, we use it to modify data because we are talking about a program. Down there you have the picture. The report is just a report, for example, results, annual figures, or whatever. And on the right side, we have a report, which is an SAP report, which is a program. All right. There are different types of programs, and in SAP you can distinguish, or you can select a different type for your specific purpose. You can use a different type. For example, you can use executable programs, you can include, you can do module pools, function groups, subroutines, interfaces, classes, pools, and so on. There are a lot of possibilities where you can type or that you can specify as a type for your report. It depends on your requirements. So therefore, in the most common ways, you use an executable program because you want to start something, you want to get user input, and if this is that kind of simple, then you use an executable program. For example, includes you can use if you want to structure a report, or if you want to do a sub-report of a report, just kind of sub-object of it. And as I told you, it depends on the requirements, which kind of program type you use. The structure of an SAP report is quite simple. You have basically 3 major blocks, or 2 major blocks in this case. You have the declaration block, you have the processing block, and in this processing block contained you have the calling processing blocks. So let's have a look at the sample on the right side. There is just a small program. It's called Set My Flights. The declaration part contains the data definitions, our variables and objects, or for example user interfaces in this case. But here we're just talking about 3 simple objects, 2 objects and 1 variable. In line 3 we declare our local flight agent object, which refers to an agent class. Then in line 4 we have a local flight object directly, which refers to a flight object. And last but not least, in line 5 we have a local variable, it's called price, and which is a type of price, an amount of money, for example. And that's all I have to say. That's the declaration part. So there you can define your data that will be used in your report, and that's the major purpose of this declaration part. From line 6, beginning on line 6 or 7, you see there you have the processing block. And this processing block contains procedures, or it can contain dialog modules. And in this case, we have just the beginning of a try-catch block for exception handling. And in line 9, we do something simple, like we just map or we just assign the agent attribute of the agent class to our local object agent. And there could happen a lot of more. You see it on the left side. You can put in their event blocks, subroutines, dialog blocks, and so on, a lot of things. So the major part is the declaration and the processing block. Just as a background information for reports. And this simple structure, that means you have first your declaration and then your processing, is something that came from the past, I would say, because you have an ordinary ABAP import implemented in an old-fashioned way, means that you're starting on the top with your declaration, and then you go down, 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 and implement your report, or do the selection criteria, or do the processing, and it's all contained in one report file, for example, or in one report. These are top-down approaches there, and that's a little bit confusing. A simple normal report, for example, with only one output screen, you do not have to do a magic like creating a special pattern. You can do it in the top-down approach like we saw it previously. This does not contain any user interaction or sub-reports. For example, if you want to have a user interface and click something, then you want a new report to be started, and so on. And if you do this just in this approach, in this top-down approach within one report file or in one include, this leads to so-called spaghetti code. Spaghetti code means you have one beginning and one end. And between these beginning and the end, you have 1,000 lines of code, for example. There are reports they can contain more than 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 lines of code. And the result is it's hard to support. So guess you are the developer. You start developing your report. That means look at these sample pictures here. You have your packages, or you have your starting point in step 1. Then you do something with this, you process it, then you go to step 2, you do something, process it, and so on and so on. And that means you have a serial processing way, and that means it's hard to support because you started at step 1, maybe another developer would start at 3, and number 3 would be his number 1 because there's a different approach. So before you start supporting such a spaghetti code, think about a refactoring. That's my suggestion in this case, because it's quite hard to understand what somebody tried to develop some months or years ago, and you do not understand it. Therefore, the object-oriented approach might be the better choice for you. Object-oriented reports are more elegant and more easy to support. Elegant, it's not an aesthetic thing, it's a more elegant thing because you can support it more easily. You have to focus on the objects, and these objects, they represent, or they abstract concrete objects from the real world. Guess your object, maybe it's a bird. We create an object, it's called bird, and we have a special object that inherits these things from a bird. We call it, let's say it's a duck. You see it, their objects are first defined by a character and then by their properties. For example, a bird can fly, even a duck can fly, maybe a chicken cannot fly, whatever, something like this. So if you use this object approach, for example, with chickens or with cars, you have a brand, you have a car, and then you have a sub-brand, for example, BMW. I do not want to make merchandise or commercials for them. It's just about the object relation. You have one object, and the other objects, the following objects, inherit from this object, for example, properties or characters. These objects are represented by their internal structure and attributes, in this case, for example, data. And then you have an object behavior that is described by methods, previously called functions, for example. And you can encapsulate the characteristics or behavior in different modules or different objects. And that's quite simple, or it's a better approach and more elegant, because you can reuse these attributes or these modules and objects for other purposes. User can map realistic problems, so you can project the reality, for example, or some parts of the reality in kind of objects into these object-oriented reports. It sounds more abstract than it is, but the advantages of this approach are quite clear, because complex systems are easier to understand and you have a better representation of reality using this encapsulation. So guess you have to support, or you have to do maintenance in these codings. It's quite hard to do maintenance in a 4,000 or 2,000 lines of code report than to create or then to change a method which does not contain more than 70 lines of code. So it's more easy to overview single methods. You have to do less alterations at other system points, for example, and as I told previously, you can reuse the individual components, which means less maintenance effort. There is a special approach or a special pattern that you could use for your development, and it's called a Model View Controller, short MVC. And this MVC approach represents a clear distinction between processing, control, data model, and interface display data. For example, you have areas distinguished by these three objects. Model view controller, that means the model contains all the objects that are used. The controller controls the use of these objects, and the view is just the presentation layer, which contains, for example, an overview or lists or whatever. So you distinguish between all these three topics. It's a controller-based approach. That means the controller controls everything. And as I told previously, it ensures the clear distinction between application logic and presentation logic. So meaning, if you want to change your logic behind your presentation, you do not have to change the presentation. So the user will not see an impact in the best way because you are changing something in the background, and you can distinguish it, or you can distinguish between both worlds. So the front end and the back end, for example, does not mean that the front end has to be changed if you change the back end, or vice versa. If you want to do some changes, maybe you want to put some information from the lower left side to the upper right side, you do not have to do anything in the background or in the model. It's just a view thing. That's just a dedicated thing in the view part. And you see it here, it's structuring and organizing graphical interfaces into logical units. That's what I told. That means you can organize it in a logical unit, and you do not have to change the background due to this if you want to do front-end changes. The advantages of the Model View Controller reports, they are simplified application structures. They have a simplified application structure. A view is separate from controller and model. That's what I taught. and the option to you have the option to generate program-driven layout. You have an easier element navigation or module navigation, which reduces the network traffic. You're in the same working process. In SAP, we call it logical unit of work, the LUW. And this means you can easier create objects within this LUW, and you can save memory due to this approach. You distribute user interface into components, and few redirects between the components, they optimize performance. It's intuitive, and it does not sound like this, but it's an easy-to-use approach for application development. So first you have to understand this MVC pattern, and then it's more easy to develop applications in this approach, because the advantages are listed above. All right, how can we use this, or how can we apply this pattern in our ABAP development? We will do this in a sample report. I will show you how this works, and this report is structured quite simple. We create a report, and this report contains out of 3 includes. These 3 includes are, as for example, we name it set my report top for the top include declarations. We can use set my report LCL for local class definitions and implementation of the class methods. And we use the set my run report to start the report. That's just the structure of the report. The method or the class LCL, the local class, will just contain three methods: the call function, the run program, and for the output show result. These 3 methods are contained in the LCL class, and there you see the classes. First, globally used variables and structures we will externalize into one top include. On the right side you see this sample top include, but in this sample it's very, very easy. You do not have to include everything in there because we do not need that much for our sample report. So the top include in this case is only 1 single line. On the right side we have 3 lines because 2 lines are comments. On the left side you see the implementation and the definition of the local class. Line 1 till 7 in this example contains the definition part, and line 10 till 30 contains the implementation. So that's quite simple. The definition contains all previously named 3 methods: run program, call function, and show result. And down there we do the implementation in line starting line 10 with just a simple run program. We have a call function, and we have a show result. We just do something sophisticated like printing a name. To keep this as simple as possible, run program will call all our methods. In this case, run program will call function. Afterwards, it will call the show result. Call function itself does not do anything very crazy. It just returns a name in this case. But this call function is the major part of this program, or of this report, because in call function we would do the sophisticated things of our reports. For example, in this method you can do your foobar calls, or you can do data selections from database or data processing, whatever, and then you prepare it, we return it for the output, and the output can be done with the show result method. All right, calling the report is our last but not least include. On the right side you see set my report run, and it just only requires the execution of our run program from the local class. For example, there you could do an exception handling or whatever, but for our simple sample it's not required. And on the left side you see the structure of our report, what's contained in this. So let's switch to the system and let's have a look at, oh no, it's gone. Let's have a look at the implementation of this. So I hope this system is still alive. It does not look like this, so we have to connect again. Now I see my password, no worries, it's changed afterwards. Alright, so now we are online again, and hopefully the system is responding. Fingers crossed, here we go. Okay. There it is. So let's start with our report. We will create a new report, in this case an ABAP program. Let's name it set my, oh yeah, it's predefined, set my structured report. We say it's a sample report. So important is we are working in a TMP package. That means it will not be transported anywhere. No connected system will be ever get our report here. So you cannot harm anybody if you're working in a TMP package. All right, so we created, and now the system wants to have a transport, but we are working on TMP. There is no transport required. Let's create a report. Here we have the report, but that's, as I told you, it's not required for our purpose. Yeah, whatever. So we will uncomment it. First, we will move this report declaration to our include, to our first include. And if you look at the slides back, the first include is the top include. So we go there and say include. And we say set my report, we call it top include. Okay, now I save this. And here on the left side you see the hierarchy. You have the programs and structured report. And you see our includes. Wait a minute, that's not what I want to see. There's the top include. And our top include just contains this report call. All right, then we go back into our report and we use include, set my report, LCL. So in this sample, it's already created. Let's go to this LCL, and we do it completely new because that's better to understand if you get it step by step. So therefore we say it's a class, and we say we will create this local class in this way here. We say it's the local class my report definition. Okay, end of class. Here in this case we have to define what's contained in our class, and these classes have 3 different sections. For example, we have the private section, we have the protected section, and we have the public section. These sections are quite interesting if you want to hide or if you want to encapsulate methods. In our sample, we just focus on the public section because we do not have to hide anything. Nobody can harm anybody by using our methods, and therefore we skip this and we just use the public section, and all our methods are public available, meaning we have class methods. And let's go, what's the starting method? We start with run program, for example. This run program maybe has an exception. That's something we can define, but it's not necessary for now. Then we have this call function and show result. We have the call function. And we have class methods show result. The call function in our case contains a returning value or returns a value, and let's name it returning value name. We have to specify a type. In this case, we say it's just the name, it's character 50. This returning value will be hand over to the show result method, and therefore we have an importing value. Importing here in this case, we say it's an IV name, and it's the same data type in this case. Quite simple. It's character 50. Here we go. Okay, so we can format our coding. It's the same thing like in NetWeaver. We can say format, and then it's aligned and shifted. Okay, that's our definition. I will save my definition, and now we do the implementation of this class. Class, nope. Class LCL. You should know it here. There we go. Implementation. And now we can say method. And now we use our code completion in this case. And here you see all the methods that are not implemented but defined for now. So let's go for run program. We start with the run program method. And here we have to define maybe a local variable name. It's type character 50 like all the other ones. Then we want to do the call function. And here we get, if we call the function, that's our core function in this sophisticated program, we get a value back from this method, and the value here is the RV name, and we want to have it in the LV name in our local variable. That means we want to wait a second. Not returning, it's receiving. My fault. Okay, because here the returning value is the we want to assign to our local value or local variable, and then we use this local variable and we give it to, wait a second, to the show methods, show result method in this case. And here we say, take the LV name, that's your importing parameter. Okay. This is our very, very big run program method. Now we have to define the other ones as well. So the method, in this case, call function. Then we use this AND method. And here we do something. Here you could, for example, do the foobar calls and SQL select or report calls and so on. In our sample here we do something very sophisticated, kind of rocket science. We say our receiving or returning name in this case is a simple string. We call this guy, for example, Oscar Mazareth. That's it. So far so good, and last but not least we have to define another method, and in this case it's the show result and method. And show results in our sample here is quite simple. We do something like the IV name will be printed. Now we do a formatting for this hard to read source code here, and let's check. There is nothing left. And now we save our local implementation. And now we have to include our final include. We do include the report run. And the report run does nothing else than containing start of selection and calling our public method run program. This is the report. That's something we can delete, so it's quite easy. I will save it. and activate everything here, select all, and go for it. Okay, what is wrong? I hope nothing. It should work. Okay. So now if everything went fine, we can run our report. Right click on the report name and we say run as, for example, ABAP application. And here we see the system is a little bit slow. And here we see our sample report. And with the rocket science like output, there is our name stated. That's the sample output of our report. Again, we have 3 includes, our top include, just containing the report call, our local class definition, and the local class implementation. And here you see what we are doing. We are running our program. We do a function call. We're calling a very sophisticated function that returns us a name. In this case, it's Oscar Maserat. And we have a show result. And the show result does the output. So to distinguish between output and processing, you see it here. I can change something in the call function. I can externalize it somewhere else, for example, in the function module, wherever. And this has no impact on the output here. So because here in this show result, I could create, for example, I don't know, something like in ALV, an advanced list view, or a more sophisticated thing like a print list or an external web service, whatever. So I can hand it over to the result there, and there is no impact from my processing part on the output in this case. Then the run is just calling our run program method from the local class, and this will lead to this output. All right, let's switch back to the presentation. There you see the summary, the live coding. That's what you saw. Here you see our show results, Oscar Maserat. That's the report sample. And as I told you in the place, you could call foo-bars for output, or you could call foo-bars for processing. It's just to distinguish between presentation layer and processing layer. All right. And here you see the coding. You can copy it or you can type it like I did. You saw it just takes a few seconds to create this whole class. It's quite simple. All right. Do you have additional questions or get additional training? Do not hesitate to ask. Erin, do we have some questions in the pipeline?
Yes, we do actually. We've got a couple. I'll just go ahead and keep you as the presenter for now. The first question for you is, can I use the method's returning parameter as a value for the new method? I think he's referring to the slide where you get the value from the method call function, I think is what this.
Oh, okay. I understand. Here we have something, this receiving. Here we could skip. I think that's the purpose, or that's the background of this question. We have a call function which returns or which sends us a receiving parameter. We can do something like this. We can say, for example, LV name will be this, and then we can remove this. That's one possibility, of course, that's possible. Or if you want to save lines of code, but it makes the coding not more easy to read, we can even skip this. We can use this call function itself, and we can use this call function itself as parameter for our show result method. That's possible as well. There is no difference, and this will work as well. So yes, the answer is yes, you can remove this and you can use this parameter as as input parameter for the new function. I hope this answers the question.
Does that answer your question, Steve? Okay, all right. He says yes. Okay, we have another question. Where can I see the hierarchy of the objects used, like shown on, I think, slide 14?
This one. Okay. Yeah, that's quite simple. Here on the left side, you have the whole package hierarchy where you see your package. In this case, we are working in the TMP package. You can see your includes there. You can fold or unfold all of them. And here you can see in our program, we can close these includes there. And our program contains the hierarchy. You see the classes of our program. Here in this case, it's organized like in a NetWeaver. And we have our includes as well listed here because they are used within this report. I hope this answers, so you can enlarge this. If this is not large enough for you, then you can enlarge this and you see the whole hierarchy on the left side.
Perfect. Okay, and we have one final question. Do the old shortcuts from NetWeaver work in Eclipse as well?
That's a more Eclipse-based question. Yes, sure. I'm not experienced with all of the previous shortcuts, but I think the most common ones are possible to use. For example, if you want to run a report, hopefully this works, you still can click on F8. I think this is the same. What's the system saying here? No. If I click on the report, no, that is the report. There. If you say run as, yeah, there is a F8 like in NetWeaver. So the most common shortcuts are reusable in Eclipse, but some of them, for example, 5 or something like this, they are already gone because Eclipse also uses shortcuts, and this activation shortcut, for example, is not longer possible, but the running shortcut or the running F8 button still works. All right. Additional questions, Erin?
Does anybody have any additional questions? If you do, just go ahead and type them in now. No, I think we're good for now. So if we want to go back to the last slide there.
All right, so let's wrap it up shortly. This is our lesson 2, and in the next lesson we will talk about new syntax in ABAP development, new syntax from the release 7.4. We are talking about the new great syntax options and compliance things like ABAP documentation. All right, thank you, Erin, and I will hand it over to you.
All right. Alrighty, just get my screen up and running. Okay, so of course, if you guys do have any additional questions, feel free to go ahead and email us those questions to info@blackvard.com. Also, if you would like to set up a consultation or you would like to look into getting some customized training, you can also email us there as well. So I would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and thank you, Lukas, for giving us your precious time today, and we'll see you guys back here soon. Bye, guys. Bye, Lukas.
Thank you. Bye-bye.